Good morning, everybody. It's still morning, so it's good. We're a little bit surprised. I saw it this morning. It's fun. I was telling the group earlier, I said it's going to be FOS and FOA, Friends of Steph and Friends of Alex, that'll show up for the morning sessions on a Sunday, but a very impressive turnout. So thank you all for coming to join us in the session. Today's session's about different ways to optimize the customer experience within the omnichannel environment. And I'm fortunate enough to have Alex join me from one of our clients, Brown Shoes, and we'll get into some of the dialogue over time. Time is short. There's a lot of material that we're going to be covering, so we're going to try to go through, but I'll keep an eye out on the audience. If you feel like there's an area that you want us to expand upon a little bit, just kind of, hey, give me a nudge or something, and we'll talk a little bit more, but we're just going to be cognizant of the time that we have, okay? So let me see if I get this right here. Click. Which way do you click? Okay. So as I said, Generix Group and Brown Shoes, we'll give a little bit of an introduction on ourselves real quick. So Generix Group, so just by way of introduction for myself, my name's Stephanie Stagger. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Generix Group North America, and I'm the Acting Head of Global Marketing for the company. Generix Group's been around for over 25 years. We are present in servicing clients across 50 countries around the world. We have thousands of customers using different elements of our solution set, from B2B integration EDI transfers through full WMS manufacturing execution to point of sale systems, loyalty program management, et cetera. So very much a unified commerce view to the world across the board, okay? We offer our solutions in a SaaS and a hybrid edge model. We think that's the future of where the direction is going, of needing to have that complement of things that are on-prem as well as off-prem or cloud-based activities. Okay, and now let's quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So I work for Brown Shoes. I'm a Senior Director of IT Strategy and Logistics. Brown Shoes is a family-owned business. We're now the fourth generation leading the company. We are only in Canada. We have 68 stores across Canada, coast to coast. We're a multi-brand shoe retailer from medium to high-end shoe. And I think one thing which is very interesting, when I came here first time 5 years ago, there's so many things when you talk about omnichannel that you can achieve, and we're not a huge corporation. And I think we'll be able to share a few things that when we created our roadmap for the next 5 years, that even if we're not the biggest retailer, we're still able to create some very interesting value for our customers. And I'll share a few of those things through the points that Stephanie will share. Perfect.
Thanks, Alex. So just a couple of things as the standard format requested. What do we expect you to be able to walk out of the room with when you leave at the end of the now 27 minutes or so? So one is leveraging the insights that Alex and Brown Shoes have had. So they've been around for 79 years, and that's pretty stellar in today's retail environments in a privately owned endeavor. They've really done something, I think, that's meaningful and powerful. They're very customer-centric. They have been since their origins. The original founders and the family, the former chairman of the board, their operating philosophy and principle has been, we want the customer to think, I need to go to Brown's, not I need a new pair of shoes. So that customer-centric, customer experience mentality has been core to them since the very beginning, and there's a lot to learn and leverage from their experience. The other thing that we want you to do is just kind of be able to walk away and say, hey, these are the things that I need to be thinking about. In my own journey around omnichannel, you're obviously all going to be already on it for the most part, but generally speaking, these are some of the must-dos that I have to keep in the back of my mind in leveraging that experience. Okay. So really quickly, the background that forms the basis of the presentation is that was my pen, sorry. We organized a study by a group called Marquez in Europe that went out and interviewed about 70 different people across retailers in Europe, taking a look and saying, what are the things that are top of mind for you? What are the things that are most challenging, or the activities that you're endeavoring to take on to be able to be providing a better customer experience, operating within this omnichannel environment? We then expanded that with a North American sampling just to validate, was there a difference in what we saw between Europe and North America and some of the needs and some of the desires that people had? And the fact was that, not surprisingly, there was a tremendous amount of sharing of the same kind of challenges, the same kind of needs. Okay, so that forms the basis of our discussion. Overarching, as we went through the survey and reviewed the results, there was three kind of consistent themes that came across that we grouped under. So one is the concept that silos are killers. If your organization today is still operating in silos, your effectiveness of being able to create that customer experience, to do everything that's required within an omnichannel environment, is going to be severely limited, if not completely a fail scenario for yourselves, okay? So making sure that we're removing silos was a consistent theme in the operations that we had. The other was that transformation's not for the faint of heart. So 79 years in existence is a long process. You have to be committed to where you're trying to go. You have to be forthright. It's touching a lot of systems, a lot of processes, a lot of groups, a lot of regions if you're global in scale or cross-regional. And so it's not something that goes in and says, hey, Alex, I've dubbed you the guy that's going to make us the omnichannel king and create that customer experience. It's not like that. It's, hey, company, we're going to survive, and this is what we need to do, okay? Customer experience demands coherence. So a few years ago, some of our participants were saying, look, when we were challenging in and saying we need to do some online retail activity, they were still having internal debates. Is online sales something that they should be doing? Was that activity something that was necessary? Well, the reality is that the argument today isn't about whether online and physical, it's the acceptance of the convergence of the two, and where do we need to go? So that's kind of another overarching theme that was present in the survey results. And Alex, based on your experience, do you think that's consistent with yours? Would you add more?
Yeah, absolutely. Like those 3 points are extremely important to us. But I think one of the things that by looking at those 3 points, one thing also that I felt was missing is the importance of having the leadership, the executive leadership, and pushing the focus of the team on what you want to achieve. Because at the end of the day, anything that you're doing is to improve the customer experience, and you need to make sure that every department working on those projects need to understand that, and they will always be focused on that. The second point, which is extremely important, is like Omnichannel for the past 5 years, company have been implementing a lot of different solutions, and what's sometimes missing is it's important to find the right solution, but it's even more important to make sure that you have the right talent to implement the solution, but also to maintain that solution. Very often you see software being implemented, and then the company is lacking the talent to really maximize on that solution.
I think that's an important point. We'll come back around to it. I think it was a consistent theme that was there, that without the right type of talent, without the right type of leadership sponsorship, that transformation that's not faint of heart, the leadership comes into that, the ability to actually execute that, making sure you have the right talent. And we all know in today's tight economies, in terms of employee bases being available, that kind of data knowledge, the absolute pieces are different. So those are key items. Okay, so over the next 20 or so minutes that we've got going in, we're going to go into the details of the survey. This is where we'll get out our 9 points, and we'll do it as a dialogue form so you get a little bit of Alex's experiences along the way with what we've discussed, okay? So first and foremost that came out is phygital is more than a buzzword. It's a pretty cool buzzword, in fairness, but it is more than a buzzword. It's that you really have to reimagine the store experience, whether it's click collect, whether it's being able to scan using your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever the case may be within the grocery store. It's definitely here, and we see it. Amazon moving from the digital environment into the physical location environment. Kroger partnering with Microsoft on digital shelving. These types of activities are showing us that there's a convergence of the physical and the digital that's here to be. And Alex, in this area, can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I think, and just walking the show, like you can see there's a lot of different applications, different hardware you can implement in your store, and it's easy to spend a lot of money on those things. But at the end of the day, I think as a retailer, the important thing is like you want to bring more technology into the store, but you want to be successful and profitable. So what can you do with the technology that will bring you the customer experience, improve that customer experience, but also make sure that you have more profits at the end of the day. And one of the things that we, so one of the things that we try to work on is like, in our case, it's, we see that a lot of our stores are in mall, and the price of the square foot in the mall are just increasing year after year, and it's very difficult for retailers to continue to be successful, bring that customer experience, as well as still being profitable, like every store being profitable. So what we're trying to do with the technology is how can we have the technology help us minimize the square foot we can use in our store. And in the past, we easily were consuming about 40% of the store being the back store. This is just square foot that you're paying, that you're not bringing value to the customer. So how can you use more technology that you can minimize the back store, have less inventory, and make sure to leverage the technology that you will still be able to fulfill the customer demands. So this is really where we want to help consume the technology to still increase the customer experience, but you're able to have a profit at the end of the day that explain why you're doing that phygital type of store.
Perfect, and we're going to hear more about that after because you've got a theme around being able to balance out profitability versus that experience aspect that's there. So a second point that came through is and this is paraphrased obviously, but it's the concept that knowledge is power. We can all generally understand that having that 360-degree view to the client, really understanding what it's going to take is gold. But getting access to that is one thing. So we've improved our systems in that we have umbrella systems that can take in all sorts of data, do things. But we have a bigger challenge to overcome, which is around the data integrity. So as things are coming through from different systems, what's the level of quality? What's the level of integrity that can be had in that collection of data to create an informed decision and not just have a pool? And so that was one of the things in the survey that came out as both a need as well as a challenge, predominantly around that integrity aspect.
And I think without a doubt, like everyone here will agree that data is key to any retailers. And I won't go too much into detail about data because there's a lot of other conferences talking about that, and I can easily spend a day just talking about data. But one thing that we felt was very important for us, and we started looking at data a few years ago, and we realized that a lot of people were spending time of trying to clean and how you will consume the data. But the reality is we really start seeing a lot of value for us when we start focusing on training our staff in the stores to make sure, because they're the one entering the data into our systems. And if you're not extremely good at that, then you're just creating a lot of complexity in the next step that will follow up. So we start to do a lot of training on that, and we saw very quick value in the training we were providing to our sales associate and cashier. And the other thing that we did is we start implementing software that will help the sales associate validate the information as they were entering into the system. So if ever there's a problem with the system, with the email address, we flag it to the sales associate, and on the go they can validate it with the customer. It's much easier to validate an information with the customer than trying to use technology afterwards without the customer to find what was supposed to be the right information. So I think spending the time early on in that process, it's extremely important, because this is where, with good data, you will still be able to leverage all the different technologies that are out there to maximize your revenue. So,
it's interesting, Alex, and this is a little bit off the cuff for us, but it just came to mind because you've got the combination of the talent piece that you talked about. You have the combination of some automation and some needs that were along the way, but it's really, I think that we sometimes think of it, and we're going to talk about it in a second, automation is kind of the catch-all of where things are, but you can't forget the people aspect, and that the people can actually make the technology much more successful along the way of balancing out. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing for us as a theme to continue forward. So the third element that came through was around the concept of, and again this is paraphrased, is don't let your systems hold you back. Over 50% of respondents to the survey said they had good concepts of what they wanted to do. They understood what they needed to do to take more advantage, but the systems that they had in place were too rigid. They weren't able to have flexibility in what they wanted to do. The engagements that they would have to have are expensive, costly to go in, and so the concept of experimentation or really being able to be aggressive was limited by those constraints. Alex, I know this is something that you guys incurred or dealt with as well.
And again, if we go back 5 years ago and we were looking at the state we were at that point, we were almost all on legacy system. We had a lot of work to do ahead of us, and we had a hard way of finding like what was the first good step. So in the past 5 years, we changed two very important systems: our WMS warehouse management system, which was 5 years ago, and then our OMS, which was 18 months ago, order management system. And one thing which is extremely important, this is what people will easily try to identify at first, is you need to find the solution that will meet your need at that day. But what we felt was even more important is you need to identify like a system that will be flexible, that will be able to evolve with you. Because with Omnichannel these days, like every month, every season, there's new parameters coming into play, and you need to have a system that will be able to adapt to those changes. You don't want to have a system that whenever you have an idea, this become a project. You want to be able to have ideas and be able to act upon them and be able to implement it very quickly. And one of the things, like when we were selecting, like we've done a multiple process of selecting vendors, and one of the things I felt was really good for us is we try always to find one of our requirements was very complex, and we try to ask our vendors, like, show us in the selling process, like, oh, your solution was capable of meeting that requirements. And we felt pretty much like three types of vendors. First one was saying, oh, what? It's on our roadmap. We'll be able to do it at some point. The second one will come see you and say, what, we didn't do it, but this is how we could do it, and you will be able to use our system to do it. And then the third type of vendors will come and show you, they will already implement it, and show you this is the result you will be getting. And it tells you a lot about the vendor, because that flexibility is something that once you take into you own the technology, you will be able to make it evolve and be very flexible in terms of your new requirements. And being flexible is like a retail. If you're not flexible, like maybe you won't be there 5 years from now. So it's extremely important to find the right partner, the right solution that will be flexible to meet your always changing requirements.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the shameless plug in. We're the WMS provider for Brown Shoes, and the agility and flexibility that was brought to the table enabled that level of lab and innovation of going in at a low cost to be able to do that type of activity, and I think it was important. So shameless plug again, if you have these limitations internally, 2942, we can talk all day on what we've got going on, okay? So going on to the next point, so KISS and collaborate. It's kind of a fun little way to go about it, but it gets the point across, which is keeping things simple was one of the survey topics that came through, of saying don't over-engineer the processes that you're putting in place. Ensure that there's an ease in how your internal parties or internal constituents and supply chain partners, as an example, are able to collaborate, connect, et cetera, internally as well as externally with the client, and that the client or the consumer is also able to interact in a readily easy fashion with yourself as well. Along with that is the concept of that automation, okay, point 5, which is anything that was a non-value add task. The survey said, if it's non-value add, automate it. Make sure that you're doing it. If there's elements that are going to make your human power more intelligent of what they're able to do, give them more information at their fingertips, act on something more progressively, do it now. And this is an area where you guys have invested really heavily. Give us a little bit of an idea.
You know what, in general, we try to be very smart about the processes. Like, we don't want people to do the same task over and over and over. And if I go back again to the past 5 years, like, we were seeing our omnichannel orders like just increasing year after year, and we're seeing our costs to fulfill those orders just increasing slowly but surely every year. And again, like, the goal of any retailer is, yes, customer experience is good, but the first thing you want to make sure you are is profitable. So we decided, like, we took a big decision. Again, we were not a huge retailer, like we have a medium size in Canada, and we decided to invest heavily in a highly automated warehouse in Montreal, and we have been running that warehouse for 5 years now. And we make sure to implement some systems around it to make sure that they were all communicating between each other extremely efficiently, and that there's a lot of things happening automatically without having any human being having to be involved. And one of the things that I think we're pretty amazed with the automation as well as the system we're able to implement, like just Black Friday, which was just a couple of months ago, we were able to fulfill orders with accuracy of 99.85% accuracy. So when you're talking about customer experience, you want to make sure that whenever you show inventory to your customers, you're not going to cancel or call them to tell them, like, do you want the other product? You want to have a system that will bring you that level of high inventory. And then again, in terms of customer experience, you talk about a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, the customers want their product fast. Like, we just have to think about Amazon Prime. A lot of people like to have their product fast. Just that by itself will bring a great customer experience. And with the automation and system we put in place, like just over the day after day, we're capable of shipping orders. 20% of our orders are shipped within 2 hours. A customer will receive the information of tracking number, and we constantly ship over 80% of the orders the same day. And just to show you how integrated our system are, without any human intervention, just the system acting by itself, we are able to ship an order from the order creation online to sending the email with the tracking information in less than 15 minutes. And then again, we do that with almost, actually with no human intervention. And the beauty of that system is, like, every single order is less than 10 steps away to be fulfilled. So we were able to, this is an area where we felt we had to work a lot as a retailer, as small retailers, to be profitable, and we put a lot of money, and now we're seeing the investment pay off now because we're extremely efficient, and the cost of fulfilling orders decreased by 5-fold over the past 5 years, so that's really good.
It's an amazing accomplishment. What obstacles did you face along the way? Did you face obstacles along the way of beating those targets and goals?
Yeah, you know what? It's of course like what you think you were going to do never change. It's never exactly what you had in mind, and that's why I said like the flexibility is something key, because like I can tell you like we implemented different systems along the path of the past 5 years, and every single month or 2 months we have iteration of changing the processes, changing the way we've done the business, so that we can we measure it and we can act upon those. So I can say like every single day we change things, the way we are handling the order fulfillment process, the way we communicate to different sales associates. And this is by adding that flexibility, this is where you can get a lot of value out of the automation system.
And along that, did you have a cross-functional team that was involved in that whole process?
Yeah, but absolutely. You cannot do if you're talking about Omnichannel, you're talking about the cashier person all the way to the exec and any people in the organization. So you need to have a lot of communication. I can say like a lot of people had doubt about spending all that money into the system. And again, like a conference I attended this morning was saying like, sometimes you don't have to do the big project to hit the home run. You need to make sure you bring value at each step of the process. And again, we look at the past 5 years, we're really proud of what we did, but we did a lot of small steps along that journey to show that, yeah, we bring value. And then the more we're bringing value, it's extremely easy now to go and bring in new ideas, because they know that we showed value like a lot of time over the past 5 years.
That's interesting. It's helpful to see that correlation. If we look at the last piece on this slide, on the 6 of the Make It Easy, this was one of the things along the customer journey, is that as consumers we have infinite choice. And so if something is challenging or difficult, or if there's things that came along the way that created an obstacle, we're less likely to have that return experience. What was interesting in the survey to me, and we'll just kind of do a quick nod of heads if you have the same, is that in point 4, around the kiss and collaborate piece of it, of keeping processes simple and making engagement simple internally, is about upwards of 50% of people that said that was really, really critical. But when the question was phrased as how important is it to keep it easy in terms of the interaction in that customer journey experience, 100% said it was. And to me, that was an interesting disconnect of saying that only 50% of us, if you looked at it that way, felt that internal process ease was critical, but the customer experience journey, 100% thought it was critical. And to me, that was inconsistent, because one feeds the other. Just nod. Do you think that's inconsistent? Do you feel that that's dead on, that you can have a separation between your internal processes and your external? Who thinks you can have a difference between your external and your internal view to the world? No one. Okay. So bad phrasing of our question then on the on our survey. We'll have to look. Okay. So moving on to point 7. So AI and machine learning. So I think there's a love-hate relationship that the world has with the concepts of AI and machine learning. Some of us find it ominous. I'm looking at something, and the thing I was thinking about in my head suddenly appeared in front of me on the screen as hey, you might be interested in this. That's always a little bit of a of a piece, but there's some very positive uses of AI, obviously, and there's some things that were really impactful for you guys.
Absolutely, and I think it's at the end of the day, it's a buzzword, like people like to hear about AI, but again, we go back to profitability, like where, in which area, like your business is potentially not as profitable as it should be, and how can AI bring some value to that? There is, of course, in the selecting the fulfillment location to ship the orders, like there's a lot of parameters, like the inventory level, the chance of that location to sell the item in a very short period of time, the cost of shipping that goods to the customer home, and then the lead time. And this is a lot of data points, and it's complex for any system to be able to make the right decision and make sure that you're bringing the most value to the customer, but also to minimize the cost to your clients. Another area, of course, like you hear a lot about that, it's all about marketing. Marketing is very complex. Like it's easy to just spend money on a marketing campaign, but with AI, if you can understand your customer much better, and not just going with campaign abroad all your different customers and try to segment your customers. This is really where an area where you can achieve some savings in terms of spend, but also increase your revenue by nailing down the proper cluster of the customers.
That's good. And it kind of will feed into this next point that came across, and again, this is paraphrased. So one of the things that came through, predominantly in Europe because of GDPR, if you're familiar with those regulations and around data privacy, data security aspects that went in, but also just the experience that we have globally around the importance of personal data protection and the reluctance that consumers have to put more of our own information out. So it's kind of these things that we talked about earlier that you on the one hand need to leverage a lot of data. You want to have that to create that path for yourself. On the other hand, there's a reluctance within the community, and there's a lot of privacy concerns that are in place. So it's a challenging piece. And as a brand, it's critical that you establish that trust in how you take care of data, how you promote and use that data, and using it wisely. And what Browns has done and how its touch points are in leveraging data, I think, are quite compelling. So from our ninth point of going in, and really looking at the concept that said around the brand integrity as well, which is deliver on your promises. So Alex already mentioned this earlier of the concept of saying, look, it's better to not have to call your customer back or send them an email to say, hey, we gave you this lead time, but it's actually going to be X. And I had the experience with the airlines recently that I was sharing with the team that said, before I got to the airport, I got a notification that said, hey, your flight's going to be delayed, there's going to be some challenges. So I was expecting it. I was ready for where it was, and my expectation had been set. In the case of Brown's customers, their expectations are set. But we also have that concept, like I said, of that infinite choice. So labeling has to be accurate. If you're in the food space, the ingredient list has to be correct. You have to make sure things aren't tainted. In the case of Brown's, where's the origin of the leather goods? Where's the activity that's taking place? These are all things that are meaningful to the trust and the integrity that gets developed around the brand. So we've got 3 minutes to just kind of go through in some conclusions, and we'll recap through and take a look. So one is the concept that silos are killers. In the case of Brown's, yes, you're in essence, you're a smaller entity, but you do have complexity across Canada, and there's a lot of different departments that went in. So in your case, was it an executive sponsor that went in and said, this is what we're going to do, and make sure that spans? I'm kind of correlating your points on the strong management.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you need executive sponsor, and you need to explain to the business unit why you're making those changes. At the end of the day, it's always relating to making sure the customer experience is getting better and better. But it's important that people understand why all those efforts, all those investments are made for the company.
And in the other concept again at the beginning, we said overarching was that the transformation wasn't for the faint of heart, and you said it. 5 years, you started moving from legacy systems into a little bit more modernized of an infrastructure. You're not where you want to be. Yep. You've come a long way. So tell us about that. Has there been reluctance along the way? Has fatigue set in?
Yeah, it's complex. It's a lot of things, and what's even more difficult is every year, like, you see new stuff coming out, and you need to be able not to get too much distracted by, like, okay, I was going in that direction, but now I see different things. So there's an habit that you have to create for yourself. Like, you need to have a nice roadmap with still having some flexibility in terms of, like, evolving, in terms of changing the priorities, but it needs to be clear where you're heading, because this is like a marathon. This is not a sprint. So
interesting. That's good. And in that customer experience demanding coherence, that was one of our earlier points, which was what we said, right, is that phygital is here to stay, that need. There is no separation of online. I think we all recognize that in today's day and age. And we talked a little bit about the strong management and solid talent. I think one of the obstacles that many people face, and I don't know if you've faced it, is in that talent recruitment, is in that modernized view to understanding data and other activities that go in. And there's lots of discussion points. Again, happy to speak to folks about how technology convergence can help also in that talent management piece. And lastly, the criticality, because we added 2 when we went through our dialogue, of those agile systems and processes being critical. Closing remarks for a minute, Alex, on some of the things that you really want people to take away?
Absolutely. I think this is 5 great conclusions, but one thing I would like to add, I think for any organization, especially it was the case for us 5 years ago, you need to understand, like, your organization is at which level of maturity. There is a lot of nice solutions out there on the floor, and not every single solution is the right fit for you. The best one might be extremely interesting, but your organization might not be able to leverage full functionality from it. It goes back to talent, but also, like, from experience, I saw way too many retailers, like, selecting a technology, and then when you go back a few months after implementation, you realize that they're only consuming 50 or even only 25% of the technology. And this is, at some point, a waste of money. So that, yes, it's nice to have the nicest and the brightest, but you need to be realistic about where you're investing your money and how capable is your organization to maximize the value of that system. So this is something that is tricky, but it's something that you need to embed into the culture and making sure that you're selecting something that is right for your level of organization at this point of time.
Excellent. So 2-second conclusion then. You got to assess where you are in terms of the maturity of your organization, your talent base, your ability to act cross-functionally, and if you have at least those 3 pieces in place and know how to make those decision points, you can start attacking those 9 items and base it out. Again, thank you for your attention. We really appreciate you coming out on a Sunday morning. I'm going in, and I'm a New Englander, so I have to say go Pats because the game's in an hour on that one. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Alex, thank you.